So I think there might be a couple minutes.
Molly, could you make a note of that, since I'm always late for the FS1 meetings, that I was on time for this meeting? All right, let's start, folks. Roll call. Mary Ann, Rob, present. Okay, we've got a quorum. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, on March 29th, 2023, Governor Maura Healey signed into law an act making appropriations for the fiscal year 2023 to provide for supplementing certain existing appropriations and for certain other activities and projects. This act includes an extension until March 31st, 2025 of the remote meeting provisions. The November 4th, 2024 Select Board meeting will be conducted via remote participation by the board. The chair will grant permission to Westwood Media to record the meeting and to anyone else who wishes to record this meeting. All right. And let's move down to the chair's update. I'm going to stall a little bit here for a minute.
The chair, Dottie's on right now.
Is she? Oh, I think it's good.
She's on the call. She's having difficulty with her audio, I mean, with her video though.
Okay, but she finished her. Okay, then you know what? Let me just say this. I'll do a quick stall here, as Pat taught me to do. We do have some openings on boards and committees. We have an opening on the Cemetery Committee, the Commission on Disability, the Cultural Council, the Historical Commission, Housing Partnership and Fair Housing, Fed Bike Committee, Rec Commission. These are all terrific committees with great chairs, and they do a lot for our town. And if folks are interested, please take a look at our portal and you'll find the application process there, or you can reach out to the
your computer here, stepping all over Joe here.
Well, Rob, at my age with my hearing, you don't notice stuff like that.
Yes.
So thank you for pointing out.
But I know the Westwood Media mics do, and it affects the viewing experience for those tuning in elsewhere.
Okay, fair enough. Let's start with, let me see if Dottie Powers, our town clerk, is, Stephanie, I didn't see you up there. Hi, Steph. Dottie, are you available to speak, or would you like to, I can move on to something else and you can come back if that works better for you.
She's coming to my office right now, so here she is. You can see the rest of it. Yeah, she is. I'm just gonna flip the camera, hold on.
Okay.
Here she is, can you see her?
Yes.
Still in one piece right now. I apologize, I'm just setting that.
Dottie, you don't have to apologize at all. I had some other announcements, so it works out just fine.
So I just wanted to go through for the public that they know. Tomorrow is election day and we will be open from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. All voting will be at Westwood High School. There's a couple of things that you need to remember. So when you go in to vote, you're going to go into the driveway that is closest to Clapboard Tree Street. The rec sign and the preschool sign will be there. So you're going to go in there. Once you get in and you park, and there's no school tomorrow, it's a professional day, so there's free parking everywhere on the campus. You can find a parking space, and you can also, there's an area right where you would go into the door to park. You're going to look for door 28. And that's where you're going to go. Once you get in, you'll be greeted by inspectors at a check-in table. If you know your precinct, you can proceed right to your precinct. If not, we'll help you and advise you where to go. There's a couple of other things that you probably should be aware of. If you may be an inactive voter, and what that means is that doesn't mean that you cannot vote. It just means that you didn't answer a census. So if you're told you're an inactive voter, you just need to have an ID. So just be sure to have an ID with a current Westwood address on it. And again, we don't ask for IDs. It's only in this circumstance, only if you are an inactive voter. Vote by mail ballots have all been, they've gone out. The deadline on that was the 26th of October. We right now have received 3,651 back. We still are outstanding a couple of thousand. We were able to process already in advance 5,781 ballots. And out of those, 2,130 ballots were vote in person. If you haven't returned your ballot yet, you cannot drop it off at the polling place. You have to bring it to the town clerk's office, or you bring it to the secure ballot drop box located in front of the Westwood Police Station. Those ballots need to be processed, and then they will be brought to the polling location to be counted. And just make sure, especially where we're, kind of down to the crunch with this, make sure that when you return your ballot, in your packet, you had a few envelopes. One envelope is an AV8, and that's the envelope that you put your brown AV7 envelope in. So that has to be signed. If it's not signed, then we can't accept it. And I think that's all the updates I have. And, I just hope, I thank everybody, for your support, and my staff. I can't thank them all enough for the hard work they've done the last couple of months to get this going. And we're all set up, and we're excited for tomorrow. And, we hope to see those who haven't voted already shall come on election day. Anybody have any questions for me?
Just want to say thank you, Dottie, to you and your team for all the work that goes into this. You guys are doing a fantastic job, and we know that there'll be a big sigh of relief when you get past the finish line tomorrow.
Yes, once tomorrow comes, it'll be great. Thank you all for your support. Appreciate it.
Ditto that, Dottie. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Dottie. Great work.
Thank you.
All right. Let's move on to Islington Center redevelopment traffic signal timing study. Per the flexible use overlay district special permit decision of the planning board dated 4/10/2018, Pedruzziello Properties redeveloped multiple properties near the Washington Street, East Street, School Street intersection, including the mixed-use steeple building on Washington Street. As part of the special permit, intersection signalization study was conducted to assess the traffic reports. There were multiple studies done. Bayside Engineering, now Foos O'Neill Bayside Engineering was acquired in August to perform traffic counts in October 2023, and the select board requested additional traffic counts 2024. The select board reviewed the traffic counts, and on March 11, 2024, the select board voted to require the developer Pedruzziello Properties LLC to implement and fund revised signalization for Washington Street, East Street, School Street intersection, and to remove the existing left turn lead phase northbound traffic on Washington Street heading west on School Street, and to provide a new left turn lead phase southbound traffic on Washington Street heading towards East Street. Foos and O'Neill completed the preliminary plans for the traffic signalization modification in late October and forwarded the plans to Beta Engineering for peer review. An update on the traffic signalization is currently scheduled for November 18th at the select board meeting. So we're still moving forward on that. Veterans Day observance will take place on November 11th. And I'd like to remind people that this will be at 11 a.m. So if you can't remember, it's 11/11/11. It'll take place at the intersection of Pond, Manhattan Street, and High Street. Speakers will include our American Legion Commander Dick Pastor, and I will be speaking as well. In the event of inclement weather, the ceremony will need to move inside the Westwood High School, Josepha Jowdy Little Theater, or the COA. If the ceremony is to be moved, the town will send an alert call before the event and post information on the town website. Residents are encouraged to sign up for alert Westwood calls on the town website, https://www.townhall.westwood.ma.us/our-town /stay connected / community notification. Residents are asked to check the website as we get closer to Veterans Day. This is a very, very special ceremony, and my wife and we've always attended that, and the American Legion Post does a great job on that. In addition to that, and Chris, you might have to help me out with this, under new hires, I got to meet two of the new hires recently. One was Rachel Haddock, social worker up at the COA. And in addition to her, we have Veronica Biederma. Is that the correct pronunciation, Chris?
Biederman.
Biederman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dangling, and we'll get your a mental health clinician who's working in conjunction with the police department. It's a shared position, and I'm very excited for both of these positions. They both seem like very, very dynamic folks, and look forward to seeing them around town. And Chris, that's going to be my segue, Tish, unless I missed something. To you, Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have one update I'd like to share, which is our COA will be holding a veterans breakfast, and they invite any veteran or spouse for the veterans to join us on Friday, November 8th at the center. It's a biannual veterans breakfast. It'll begin approximately 9:30 a.m. and it's sponsored by Needham Bank, so we certainly thank them for their sponsorship. And also State Senator Mike Rush will be present, and he'll be speaking and also discussing the new HEROES legislation that just passed. So we're excited for this opportunity, and we certainly hope to have a lot of veterans and their families attend. This is a full breakfast, and the one thing that the COA director is asking is anyone who's planning on attending, if they could please call so they could get a proper head count. You can call the Senior Center at 781-329-8799. Please call as early as tomorrow to let them know, so again, so they can have that proper head count. Thank you very much. That's my update, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chris. Before I go on, Mary Ann, Rob, any comments along the line there? We good?
Looking forward to it.
Likewise.
Thank you. Next order of business is a request to hold a 5K run walk for charity. This is for One Family Fund, a nonprofit organization. It's proposed for Sunday, November 10th from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. And we have Patrick Lukasik and Rita Rabinovich. Do we have them in line, Tish? Let me see
We have
who's who.
Patrick on. Hi,
Patrick
Patrick.
is on, yes.
Patrick, okay, would you like to read this, or would you like to shoot from the cuff?
For me?
Yes.
Yeah. So just like a summary, would you like to hear
That'd be
kind of the plan?
perfect.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you everyone for taking the time to let me ask for this or request this. My son has turned 13 and he's just had his bar mitzvah, and part of that is he has to do a mitzvah or a good deed, and he wanted to do a fundraising event around running 5Ks. It's something he's been doing with my wife for a little bit. He wanted to try to see if he could organize one, a small one. It's basically his friends and our family. And so what we did is I don't know what the term is, canvassed the neighborhood, gave all the neighbors in the Chase estate, which is where they'll be running a loop around. We put notices in their mailbox of all the residents there, asked them to have, if they had any feedback or if they had any concerns around holding this next weekend on Sunday, which is the 10th, I believe. And it's it's very short. It's from 12 to 1. The temple, Beth David is going to allow people to park there. We're going to take off from that little cul-de-sac, run around. We'll advise to stay on the sidewalks and give way to pedestrians, of course. We've also met, a lot of the folks on this call helped me discuss with the police I think it was a sergeant or lieutenant around having one person posted at the entrance of Chase Estates in case any traffic situations come up, and one roaming police officer on a bike, which is pretty cool to help follow the runners around. And that's the ask, and that's how we prepared for it.
Thank you, Patrick. Rob, do you have any questions or comments?
No, just congratulations to Isaac, and I think this is a great thing that he's doing. So wish you good weather.
Thank you.
Mary Ann?
Yes, also congratulations. And I'd love to see a young person leading by example with good deeds. That's wonderful.
He really, I wanted him to be here to show him all that goes into something like this, but he's at his final soccer dinner. So I was like, oh, fine. Like, you get out of jail free this time, but not next time.
Patrick?
Good job.
Yeah, we've all been there, so congratulations to you all. Please pass along to your son as well. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I would. I move that the select board approve a request from Patrick Lukasik and Rita Rabinovich on behalf of their son, Isaac Lukasik, to hold a 5K run walk on Sunday, November 10, 2024, from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m., contingent upon final approvals from town staff and public safety.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, roll call. Mary Ann?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Motion carries. Patrick, thank you very much.
Thank you so
Patrick, we wish
much.
you the best of luck.
Have a
Oh,
great
you guys
event.
are awesome. Thank you
Fingers
very
crossed
much.
for good weather. Yep. Take care.
Appreciate it.
Tom, I see you in the on-deck circle there, so we're up to Westwood Community Choice Electricity Program update, and we have Tom Philbin as our speaker this evening. Would you like to give us a little bit of background on this, Tom? You might be on mute, Tom.
Okay, I should be on now, am I?
Perfect. Strong word.
Okay. As you all know, we have a community choice electricity program in the town of Westwood. This program has been the work of the Westwood Environmental Action Committee. And you have both John Eisberg and Maria Constantini also watching this presentation tonight. They've done a ton of work over the last couple of years to bring this program to fruition. And WEAC is to be congratulated for the success of the program to date. We have now finished the first 20 months. The first contract was for 22 months. That's expiring in December. And we have a new contract that starts up in December to January. And we have successfully negotiated a price of approximately 14 cents for what we call Westwood Standard. That's price is very, very favorable. 14.289 cents per kilowatt hour, which is approximately 2 cents below the current price that Eversource is charging, and will probably always be below, in my opinion, at least, the Eversource price. And what this price does is essentially it gives a much higher percent of renewable energy in the sourcing of the material. Right now, there are over 5,500 accounts, residential accounts that are signed up in the program. And there are 564 commercial accounts in the program, a total of 6,000. And that is well over 90% participation. So we got a very, very favorable reaction from the town. We did the bidding in conjunction with the towns of Cohasset, Marshfield, Situate, Rochester, and Uxbridge, and we're able to secure this price. Chris Coleman was the one who was involved in the final bidding among a bunch of us, and we had about a day or so to decide to accept the bid that was offered. So it was a successful effort, and I think we're going to have a good price now for the next 36 months. This contract is somewhat longer than the original one, and it will be favorable for quite a while. So I'll be open to any questions you may have on it.
Thank you, Tom, and a special thanks to you and to the WEAC folks, and appreciate all your hard work. This is and you too, Chris. This is some exceptional work. You folks are saving the residents quite a bit of money. I'll turn it over to Mary Ann. Do you have any questions or comments before I open it up?
Thanks, Joe. Tom, thanks so much for all your work on this, to everyone at WEAC, Maria, John, all of the WEAC folks. I'm just, I'm wondering, this is a fantastic negotiation. With respect to the 10% we're missing, I know this information is on the website. We're obviously discussing it tonight. I'm just wondering, do we think there's any other way that we should be doing outreach to the folks that haven't opted in?
You know, I said over 90% when I was talking today with Dottie Powers. The numbers that we have from Eversource actually are slightly higher than we have recorded residences in the town. So it's pretty close to 100%.
Ah, okay.
I don't think there are very, very many people who are not signed up in it. And likely that's a good reason, because they saved a lot of money in the first 22 months that we have this program, and they're going to save a lot more money, I feel, over the next 36 months. And not only that, there's a tremendous carbon offset that's accomplished by what we're doing. And the renewable that we're tapping into for these sources are all Class 1 New England-based renewable resources. So it accomplishes quite a bit.
Sure does. Thank you, Tom.
Tom, real quick, I will echo Mary Ann's thanks and just ask, I see that there are the 3 tiers, the basic, the standard, and the plus. And based on what I see, it looks like the standard gets us to 72% renewable this year. And then if you go to the plus, it goes to 100% renewable. And the price on the plus looks like it is still lower than the current price in the standard offered by Eversource. So just curious, of the 3 packets, how does sort of the distribution of residences fall amongst those? How many are asked differently?
I can
what
give you
percent-
that exactly.
What percent do we have in the 100% category? I'm just curious.
We have 92 accounts at a 55.20.
Okay.
We have in the standard account, we have 5,143 in Westwood standard, and basic, people who have opted to go down to save even more money, we have 285. But the total accounts, residential accounts, are 55.20. And then on commercial, we have 20 doing basic. They actually opted down for saving money. We have 536 commercial accounts that are doing Westwood standard, and we have 8 that signed on for 100%.
Fantastic. Thank you for that.
And Tom, this is just the supply side, correct? It's not the distribution side.
That's correct. This distribution we have no control over. That's Eversource.
Right. And putting the 2 together, I think we come up around 30 cents per kilowatt hour. Is that correct for the greater Boston area?
In the greater Boston area, I think we're probably, if we put the 24, I think it's about 12 cents, 13 cents right now on that, but I'd have to check that on this. So we would be up around in this new 26, 27 cents.
Okay, terrific, excellent, strong work. All right, Tom, I don't think we need to do anything because you, Chris, have done all the heavy lifting. Unless there's something you'd like to ask, which we'd certainly be happy to.
Chair, may I add one thing, please?
Sure. Yep, go ahead, Chris.
Although I appreciate the nice words from Tom, the work that was done is really from Tom, Maria, and John. So and WEAC. I really just want to thank everyone for their contributions to get us to the point we are.
Terrific. All right, Tom, anything else we can do?
No, that's it. Just mainly informing you all of what's about to happen. You'll all be, if you're residents, you'll all be getting letters in the mail within the month.
Yes, I did notice we did get something about the new meters, but when I looked at my bill, I see we're actually paying for those new meters. Is that correct?
I don't know that. The new meter? No, that's
Nope.
something that's an Eversource thing.
Yeah, those are gonna be smart meters, so
Yes.
right now we have a truck that drives by, they'll be able to read them, right from, Eversource, and, if you have a problem, they can diagnose it online, so the entire country's pretty much has smart meters. In New England here, we haven't had them, so whether it's National Grid, Eversource here in Massachusetts, they approved, DPU approved those meters, and they're going in. It's just the next, they don't have to roll a truck if there's an issue. They can pretty much diagnose a lot of things right from the office.
Thanks, John. That's great. All right, gentlemen, thank you very much, and thank you to the WEAC folks, Maria, and who else was on from WEAC?
Just John Heisberg, who
Okay,
we just seen,
okay.
and then Maria Constantini.
Yes, well, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Next order of business. Looks like it brings us down to you, Molly, I believe. Let's see.
I'm
Fire
happy
sta-
to, yep,
Yeah,
I'm happy to kick it off. So last Tuesday, the planning board met to discuss FS1. It was a long meeting. It was a lot of really thorough, thoughtful discussion. And so we just wanted to make sure there was a space on the agenda for the board to discuss their thoughts on the meeting and any action that they felt needed to take place immediately.
All right, so I guess we're opening that up to the other board members. Rob, do you have any questions or comments you'd like to weigh in at this time?
Well, I mean, I will defer to Mary Ann first, because I think, from what I heard from Chris, there are some things that we might want to consider based on what we heard the other night. So I will defer to Mary Ann to start.
Sure. Thank you, Joe. First of all, I want to thank all the residents in the neighborhood of FS1 who attended that planning board meeting and shared their concerns with us. And I do have a number of observations from that meeting and actions that I'd like to see us take in response. So number one, I believe that the town is obligated to replace the screening that was improperly removed at the back of FS1, abutting Hillcrest Place. This is a quality of life issue for the residents impacted, and I think we should make that as right as possible, as quickly as possible. Keeping in mind the design of the proposed new fire station, I'd like that screening to be as tall and as robust as possible. So that is point number one, and something that I'd like to discuss as a group. Perhaps I can continue on with my other points and we can circle back on that. But that is, in my opinion, critical path for us. Number two, just in terms of an observation, we heard a great deal about the runoff from the current fire station. And what we know is that the current fire station has essentially no drainage, and that has created problems for the residents. And what we know, though, is that the design for the new station includes robust stormwater drainage, which will be a vast improvement as far as the runoff from the fire station itself. Next, we heard quite a bit about the traffic problems on Windsor Road and the difficulty that the residents have in terms of getting onto 109 High Street. And while this is not an issue that pertains to the fire station specifically, I do think it is a problem that we should solve for, given the proximity to the fire station. And personally, I think it is a no-brainer for us as road commissioners to implement a painted grid on the roadway with a do not block signage there to keep the intersection clear from traffic exiting and entering Windsor Road, which after all is the law, that the intersection should not be blocked. And I know from my own personal experience trying to get out of Windsor Road, and certainly what appears to be the daily experience of residents on Windsor Road, that this is a major issue. So I would advocate for that. And lastly, there were concerns expressed at that meeting about the size of the proposed new station. And of course, the size is always an issue of sensitivity anytime we're talking about building a new municipal building. However, given the input that we have received in countless meetings with our subject matter experts, namely the chief and our firefighters, along with our architects and the OPM hired by the town as required, I am very confident in the design work that has been done. I'm very confident that it has been laser focused on what we actually need for the department now and for the next 50 years, and that the size of the building meets those needs without any square footage that is not needed by the department. And the chief and our firefighters have underscored that, and that is the building that has been designed. And just lastly, I want to thank the design working group for the very significant time spent to date and the attention to detail on this project. Thank you.
All great points. Thank you very much, Marianne. Well said. Rob, I think you wanted to follow up?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I'm fully supportive of the idea of restoring the screening that the prior chief removed without following proper protocol. I mean, doing so is clearly wrong. And I agree with Marianne that we should do what we can to right this wrong immediately, provided it's not an irresponsible expense to rectify. But I think that, there's probably some solutions that can be done. With respect to the helping the neighbors get some relief related to mitigating some of the traffic issues that were highlighted for that Windsor, Sterling, Hillcrest neighborhood, I would support the suggested mitigation that Marianne just put forward on some type of pilot basis. This neighborhood has but the one entrance and egress point. I can imagine that as traffic is stopped on 109, it makes it incredibly difficult. We heard that at quite a bit. And so I think the striping is a great idea. I'd like to make sure that we get some type of regular updates as to what the impact has been on traffic flow along the 109 corridor, so that we're not actually solving one problem and potentially creating others. But I think the idea is a good one and should be pursued. I'd also like to address the process. I mean, that was a 5-hour meeting with the planning board. This board and all of our consultants and other members sat through that last planning board meeting. There was some excellent feedback from the community. And while a significant portion of that time was dedicated to that public participation, there was also a significant amount of time dedicated to critiquing the aesthetic elements of the fire station, which, by the way, is in the very late stages of development and engineering. I view it as our responsibility as select board members to maintain the public safety for our 16,000 residents. We have a responsibility also to Chief Lund and the men and women of the fire department to ensure their collective safety and providing our public safety. And we also have a responsibility to the taxpayers of Westwood to deliver those points in an appropriately efficient and effective manner. As Mary Ann just highlighted, this project has been developed with significant input from the user group, our Westwood Fire Department. It's been informed by both operational and feasibility studies, which project both current and future needs of the community and the department, as well as where to best site to ensure rapid response time. Now, from the outset, this building has been designed from the inside out based on the programmatic needs of the department, based largely on the apparatus, the vehicles and the equipment, as well as the composition of the fire department team and the evolved safety standards to protect our firefighters. Now, we have seen a number of design changes put forward by members of the planning board that were not informed by any operational requirements of the department and were highly subjective in nature. Many of these subjective recommendations add unnecessarily to the cost of the project. Mary Ann mentioned the working group we have comprised of the Westwood Fire Department, town staff, community members from the Permanent Building Commission, and external consultants who have worked for 10 months on both the functional and the aesthetic design of this fire station. Personally, I don't recall any of us voting for the design of said fire station to be crowdsourced. I believe we're wasting valuable time, which also means money, on many of these subjective recommendations. Most of these recommendations have come, or most recently, I'm sorry, these recommendations have even come with an inference that if not adopted, one member could not vote in favor of the required EIDR, environmental design review, approval, and might even speak against the design on the floor of town meeting. Mr. Chair, let me be crystal clear. This project is needed. It's long overdue, and I am personally beyond the point of willingness to fiddle while Rome burns, while driving increased costs based on the subjective nature of aesthetic considerations. I do not want to see the firm we hired, Doran Whittier, waste any more time or town money considering how to incorporate aesthetic changes to this building that is already more than acceptable. I honestly don't think that any planning board member is looking to throw the baby out with the bathwater here, given the critical importance of this project to our community. So that's sort of my feedback on the meeting from the other night. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Rob. Couple of questions. You want to paint the block a pilot basis and regular updates. Who did you want those updates to come from, and how are you going to do that?
I would think that those would come from the police department, based on any traffic impact that we are seeing on a regular basis. I like the idea, but I don't know that we know what the impact of doing such would be on the traffic along 109. So all I'm saying is let's call it a test to start and then get regular updates so that in the event that there is some unforeseen impact that makes things worse instead of better, that we have the right and the ability to reconsider.
Thanks, Rob. In case you don't know, I noticed that a new painted block was installed on East Street by Morrison Park within the last 2 weeks, and that seems to be helping, just like the other two in Islington are helping as well. So fingers crossed. I hope this helps the residents in that Hillcrest, Windsor Road neighborhood. I think Todd's done a great work on that, and I know the residents on Brookfield Road are very grateful for that. So hopefully this has the same results on Windsor Road. I agree it was a rather long meeting, but we certainly do need to hear from the residents as best we can. And I think that's important in any project that we do. Chief Lund, do you have any comments on any of this? And I'm not putting you on the spot. I'm just thinking as far as feedback from your staff in regards to the meeting or any of that.
We heard what was being said. Since then, I've adjusted the lights. We repaired the lower lights on the back of the building and turned off the upper spotlights. And I reached out to one of the neighbors and by email and have been going back and forth with him about that. And he said, thank you. It's made a big difference. I'm all for replacing the screening. It was a unilateral decision to do that in the past, and I don't think that it was appropriate.
Thank you, Chief. All right, Chris, is there anything you'd like to say at this point?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I certainly want to follow up with what Chief Lund said, and the town needs to lead by example. And one of the things that we did do, we heard what the residents said, and want to thank the planning board for providing that venue. And also, we did have a meeting on Friday, and working with Dawn Whittier, there have been, and Nora, please correct me if I misspeak on this, but we talked about changing, they talked about changing some of the plantings in the rear of the building. So the larger plantings would be approximately 12 to 14 feet at planting. The smaller trees would be approximately 8 feet at planting. And the suggestion going forward, and this is also what's going to be presented to the planning board later this week, would be for those plantings to be put in place before construction. So the screening, we would have a new screening in place, correcting the unauthorized removal. Also, my understanding is the larger plantings would grow up to 30 feet, Nora, if I'm not mistaken. And that is higher than what was previously submitted. So we certainly heard what the residents were saying. I certainly apologize on behalf of the town for what was done incorrectly and without authorization, and we will make good on that. The other thing that we have also done, we're hearing from the board, if you would like some of the pavement markings, I can certainly speak with our DPW director to have him work with our vendor ASAP to get those pavement markings in place. The box in front of Windsor, and if I'm understanding what I'm hearing from the board, is do not block would be written in both directions on High Street before that. And then I would certainly speak with Chief Silva as well as our DPW director regarding the data that the board has been asking for. Nora, did I misspeak at all on the trees and the planting? Okay.
No, you expressed it.
Thank you.
Chris, Nora, one question on that. I heard you say that you were talking about putting it in ahead of construction, which I think is a great idea because I think it's, helps provide some buffer from the construction while it's going on. There would not be any need to have anything removed during construction so that we're planting it twice, right?
That's correct. No, I'll let Nora answer this one.
Yeah, the trees are in an area that's not planned for regrading, so it would not be a problem that way. The only risk is that they could die if they're not properly watered. And because there's no, there won't be water available at the station during the construction project, they'll have to be watered with the water truck. So it's just something we have to make the contractor aware of. They'll put the plants in early and they have to take care of them for the 2-year period of construction.
Thank you.
And Chris, just to follow up on the do not block. That would be my preference. I think seeing that language, I don't have data on this, but just in my experience as a motorist, I know that if I see, that lettering, that signage on the roadway, it's something that I would pay more attention to, and hope that others would too.
One of the things I would also, if the board is so inclined, I would also speak with the DPW director about some additional signage before you approach the do not block area to give motorists a further awareness that what is up ahead. So those would be signs that would be put on the sides of the road before you would reach that in each direction.
Are you thinking that is a permanent physical sign, or is that you're talking about using some of the temporary digital signage to let people know that these are going in?
I would recommend that we put something in a little more secure. I mean, if it's something that the board would like us to remove thereafter, we can certainly speak with Public Works about doing that, but this would be something that would be on a signpost in the right of way.
Okay.
And Nora, I was not going to skip over you. Is there anything else you'd like to add to this? I have a couple of questions, but anything else you'd like to add?
The only other thing I'd like to add, I know there was some adjustments being made to the timing of the light at that intersection. I think that the biggest problem is that the Gay Street light turns red before the Windsor Road light turns red. And so cars that are heading south on High Street speed up when they see that light turning red. So if they could just reverse the timing so that the Windsor Road light turns red in advance of the Gay Street without changing the length of the permissions, I think that might go a long way too. So just something to look into.
Did you send that observation along to our DPW director?
So I did mention it to Todd. I will have a further, more in-depth conversation with him this week.
Great, good point. Okay,
Mr. Chair, point of order here. Do
Sure.
we, you as road commissioners, make a formal motion here? I guess I'm putting that question to town council.
You can, you could also, thinking about it logically, you could also have a motion where you order the DPW director to report back to you with a plan of how he wants to stripe and sign the area before you move forward. So you get his valuable input on it. But it's your discretion. You can have a motion that orders him to do it, or you can have a motion asking him to submit a plan for you to get it done.
I'll defer to my colleagues. I think I'd like to see a plan from the DPW director, but if we feel the urgency of now to get this done this evening, I can support whatever my colleagues would like to see.
Well, I think we're talking about two things here, right? We're talking about striping the roadway, signage, potentially, as well as the light signalization. And we have the benefit of having an excellent DPW department and director. So I think given that the DPW would be executing this and we value their opinion, I think it would make sense. Perhaps we could ask him to report back at our next meeting on the 18th. If I'm seeing nodding heads, so that, you know, we can get this done quickly, but have his valuable input as well. Joe, how does that sound to you? Joe?
well, it sounds good. It sounds
So-
good.
So point of order, Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Absolutely.
this is a work in progress. So you're going to probably have several iterations of this moving forward. And I think you want to keep your finger on the pulse. And I think I'm hearing that you want to provide relief for that neighborhood. And it may take listening to Nora talk about addressing the signalization at the lights, signage and striping. I think it would behoove you to give this to Todd and let him run with his crew with it and come back to you with how he wants to do it.
That sounds good too. That sounds good too, but I have to share something with you folks. I think, Mary Ann, it's broken down to two things. I think the signalization is one part of this component, and I can see that taking some time, and that concerns me. The second part of this is the striping on the road. Let me just give you my own personal experience and we can run from there, okay? But some folks from Brookfield Road approached me years ago and said they couldn't get out of their road when the light turns green. I went down 2 evenings, this time of year when it's dark out. I went down 2 evenings and watched, and they were absolutely right. They could not get out of Brookfield Road when they have a green light. I think the folks on Windsor Road are experiencing the same thing. I spoke with Nancy Hyde. She sounded very concerned. And within 2 weeks, the Brookfield Washington Street was striped off. And Todd took it a step further, recognizing the same problem at Marshall Street, and that was striped off as well. I personally like to see something done sooner than later, but I'll defer to you two. If you folks want to wait another couple of weeks before Todd comes back to us and another 2 weeks to get the striping done, that's fine. Me personally, I would go ASAP, with ASAP.
Well, you know what, as you say, Joe, it's two issues. I think the signalization is a little more complicated, right? There's coordination. So as I said earlier, I think striping that roadway to say do not block is a no-brainer. That's how I feel. So I would be comfortable, and I've spoken to Todd about this already. Um,
Thank you.
I would be very comfortable with moving forward immediately with the do not block striping, but I would like to hear more from Todd, particularly with what Nora said earlier about Gay Street Light, to perhaps have him report back to us on that piece at our next meeting.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that as an approach. I mean, these two things don't have to be done exactly the same time. I also spoke with Todd. I believe that it's not that difficult to change the signalization itself, because I had wanted to make sure I understood before coming to this conversation. So, given what we heard, given that the striping could be done and could provide some immediate relief and could only be potentially improved by the signalization piece, I agree with Pat in giving, Todd the ability to sort of put together a plan, but let's get the striping done. I'm supportive of that, and I think that is what I'm hearing from the two of you as well.
So so it would entail a motion, basically ordering the DPW to put do not block striping in at Windsor Road, and asking Todd to come back with a plan how to handle the synchronization of the lights with that in mind.
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Pat.
My pleasure.
What a team. Roll call, Mary Ann,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well for the immediate striping of the intersection at Windsor Road. And backing up, thank you, thanks, Pat, for chiming in there. Mary Ann, you made very succinct points on this. The screening in the rear of the station, is that to be done? Let's make sure the folks at home understand exactly what we're talking about. Is that to be done immediately, Chris?
Screening would be done, if FS1 were to be approved at, through the permitting process and at town meeting, it would be done before construction. That would be the plan.
Okay, now I'm confused. We made a mistake, but we're going to wait to see on the funding before we remedy that mistake?
The recommendation would be to wait to see, so you don't have two plantings going on with different species. So the idea would be to put the new, because if Nor, if I'm not mistaken, what we were talking about is putting something in now and then taking out and putting in these larger trees as part of the construction project, is the plan that we're looking to go forward through the planning board.
Can I ask a question as a point of order? Perhaps Nora could answer this, and I just don't, I'm ignorant. Nora, what would be the most appropriate time for planting new trees there, given that we're in November?
So trees can be planted between April 15th and June 15th, or between September 15th and November 15th. So we're pretty much running out of time now to plant them. So in the spring season, they could be planted if town meeting approves the fire station funding project, then they could still be planted before June 15th.
Okay. So as a practical matter, it sounds like we wouldn't have time to get plantings done before April anyway.
Yeah, not in this fall season. It's about to end. It would be very difficult to source trees this large on such short notice, but they could be sourced over the winter and they could be planted in the late spring.
So I think that's helpful to this discussion.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that, to some of the core, I think, of your question, Joe, is I think we're committed to doing this, regardless of the outcome of the town vote. I think we it was removed. We'll obviously have to figure out source of funds on something like that, but that is something that I believe we all are committed to, is providing and restoring the screening. So I think that doing it once and doing it right as part of the project, because I believe we're all hopeful that we are moving this forward, is the right thing to do. But I don't think that trying to rush it between now and November 15th, given all that Nora has just laid out in terms of the challenge that would present, I think that we are fairly well in alignment.
Okay. Marion, you also mentioned the runoff, which I agree 100% with, that there'll be 100% improvement over what's currently there. Traffic issues we discussed, size, you handled that well. The do not block striping we're taking care of. Police department on the pilot. And Rob, as far as, I don't think anybody was happy with the length of that meeting, but I certainly have to say that I ran into some long meetings on the Concom as well, and sometimes you try your very best to expedite the process, and sometimes you just have to let people have their say. I understand
To
that.
be
and I'm
clear,
so-
Joe, I had no issue with the length of the meeting based on public input. I think my concern over the course of the last two meetings has been the amount of aesthetic design recommendation and the fact that the latest notes that have come through carried with them an inference of do it or else, I will not vote to support, is quite frankly, this is one person making aesthetic design recommendations, and they do not, as far as I know, have an architectural license. We did not vote to crowdsource the design of this station. And quite frankly, much of what has been put forward adds to cost. And as I said earlier, our responsibility is to provide for the public safety, to provide for the safety of the men and women of the fire department, and to get this project done as efficiently and effectively as we can do. And I don't know that the number of things that are being forced to be considered are helpful and accretive to the project.
All right, maybe I had a different perception of the meeting, and we're gonna move this along, but I didn't hear any inference of do this or else. I thought they were all suggestions that the FS1 working group could incorporate into their discussion. That's how I took that. I
If
didn't-
you read the latest set of notes that were passed on to us over the weekend from Chris that came in to Molly, you will see a couple of places where those inferences are maybe even more than inferences.
All right, we're gonna move this along unless Rob and Marion, I missed something. I don't think, so we have the motion, Pat, that you put forward. We agree with that. So Molly, is there anything else you want to say about this FS1 working group before we move on to your next chapter?
Just that we'll be meeting with the planning board again this Thursday night.
Thank you.
So, point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
So do you want to, it's at your discretion, all three of you, do you want to have a motion to order the replanting of those trees that were taken down without proper review? You're not going to get them in by November 15th. I agree with Nora. Sourcing them at that size would be very challenging. Or do you just want to indicate as a group that that's what you're going to do come spring? It's up to you.
I'd be in favor of the latter in terms of just indicating that's what we're going to do come spring. And if we need to take a vote leading into that at that time, we can.
Fair enough.
I agree with that. I think Joe, Rob, and I have all expressed a firm commitment, as has Chris Coleman, who I understand has directly reached out to residents in that neighborhood, that we have a commitment to make this right along the lines that we just discussed.
Wanted to give you your options, nothing more.
Yep, and I'd also like to thank Mr. DeMeo, and I believe it was Elijah who had pulled up the Google Earth photos, because the photos that were shown that evening on the planning board screen were quite compelling, and they were actually not ones that were included in the original packet of material that was sent to us. So I thought that was very, very helpful to see. So thank you both to Mr. DeMayo and to Elijah.
Worth 1,000 words.
Amen. You're right. Okay, that's great. Okay, so I think hopefully the neighborhood understands our commitment towards rectifying that. And I'm going to move on to new business classification compensation study update. Molly, I think you're handling this.
I am. I was trying to think of the best way to try to explain this, and I've gone a bunch of different iterations, but what it really comes down to is that every 3 years, town administration comes to the board with recommendations for collective bargaining. We sit down with the different bargaining groups, police, fire, DPW. Through that process, there's a market analysis of comparable communities to say what other communities are paying for those positions. The two sides go back and forth, and we make a recommendation for the board to accept or not, and that moves on. So that's on a 3-year cyclical cycle. What is not on that same cycle is non-represented employees, which in Westwood is called ATP, Advanced Technical Professionals, which includes the library staff. So you're talking non-represented and library staff. The last time the library staff was reviewed at that sort of level was 2016. And the last time non-represented employees were reviewed to any level was 2010. So we're pushing 15 years since these positions, and we're in this case talking about 116 positions have been reviewed for their market analysis and internal equity. So at the end of 2023, the town was awarded a grant through the Massachusetts Community Compact to conduct a study. We hired MGT later that year or early 2024 to conduct it. And what they did is twofold. Externally, they set a list of communities that are like us by looking at things like population, tax levy, geography, different characteristics. They took all of the 116 jobs that we asked them to look at and went to those 16 communities to say, do you have this community? And if so, what is the going rate for that? So there's a lot of external research done. Internally, all of the 116 individuals completed an analysis of their job description. That analysis was then reviewed by the department head, myself, and ultimately the consultant. Each area, call it education, years of experience, are awarded certain number of points. Say an associate's degree required for the position gets you 10 points. 7 to 10 years of experience for the position gets you another 50 points. And what the consultant MGT ultimately did is grouped the points with points. Positions that had similar points together were grouped together in a new classification study. This classification and compensation study was then presented to the personnel board at the end of October, which accepted it and approved its implementation. And I'm here tonight to, one, tell you that this project that was 15 years in the making is finally done, which is a really great accomplishment, and to look forward in how do we implement this. So the best practice when a classification compensation study is completed is to implement it as quickly as possible. The reason for that being you want any position that is really under market to be able to come up to its fair market price as soon as possible. In doing the analysis of this, we took every employee who's covered under this plan, what their current grade and salary are, comparing that to, on the new plan, what their proposed grade and salary will be. So we say, Barbara makes $50,000 on this new plan. She's going to make $51,000 on the next plan because that's the salary that's closest to hers. The difference between where we're moving them into the new plan and the old plan is the implementation cost, which for this project was approximately $133,000 if implemented on January 1st, 2025. So we are looking to move forward with this project knowing that there's a cost. So the $133,000 represents a worst case scenario. There will be some departments that either due to their size can cover the increase in cost, or if there's staff turnover and there's a period of time when there's not an incumbent in the position, that department would be creating its own salary capture. I'm just looking at, do I have anything else I want to do? A couple of notes. You know, Westwood is a wonderful place to work. I like to tell people I skip to work every day, but there's been a number of positions that have remained vacant for long periods of time, and that is in no small part to the salary that was posted for the position. So some examples I was able to look over the past few years. The benefits coordinator position was vacant for 22 months. Staff assistant position was vacant for 15 months. Nora would be, would back me on some of the planning department positions were very difficult to recruit for. The town planner position was open for 8 months, housing and land use position for 6 months, and on and on. So this position, this right sizing of the classification will make Westwood more advantageous, an easier place to recruit for, and importantly, a very important tool in retention, in keeping our workforce here. It saves on the cost of trying to recruit for their replacement, but also on maintaining the institutional knowledge that we're so lucky to have here. And then finally, before I open it up to any questions that you may have, we are making a recommendation that the town adopt a formal financial policy, that we do a classification and compensation study minimum every 5 years. So we're not in this position every 15 years where we're trying to make a larger jump than we would have if it was only sort of 5 years past. So that's the project outline. That's where we've spent the last 6 to 8 months working on, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about it.
Thank you, Molly. Mary Ann, any thoughts or questions?
Yes, thanks, Joe. And
Oh,
thank you,
sorry,
Molly.
Rob.
It's all right. No worries. Go ahead.
Rob, I'd be happy to defer to you. No, okay.
Old eyes, sorry, man.
That's all right.
And I know you always cover me, Rob. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Just quickly, Molly, first of all, thank you for all of your work on this. I'm delighted that you were able to obtain a grant to perform this study. And I know that we're just discussing this tonight and we're not taking action tonight, but I'm fully supportive of developing a policy where we do this review every 5 years. I think that is prudent and in keeping with our conservative financial policies. What I hear you saying, Molly, having reviewed this, to kind of break it down, what the study showed is that we were not marketable in these positions, and that in order to be marketable, to A, hire, and B, retain good talent, that we need to be marketable as a community, and of course, as just a matter of fairness and equity to the people who work for us, that we need to pay them in line with what their position demands and what it is afforded in other communities. Do I have all of that right?
You've summed it up very well.
Thank you. Rob, to you.
Sure. So, and this is probably as much for Chris and or Stephanie in terms of the recommended funding source for, I applaud the breaking it up, the impact up over 2 fiscal years. So let's talk a little bit about the funding source.
Sorry, Chris unmuted, so I assumed you were going to go for that. What I would say, and I'll let Chris or Stephanie jump onto this, is that the recommendation would be we watch for a couple of months, we see where departments land, and then come March or April, we would likely be coming back to the select board for a select board reserve transfer to cover any departments that were not able to cover the increases in their own operating budgets.
So based on the numbers I heard you say before, we are max exposure just under $133,000 for current fiscal year, and then you're going to hopefully be able to mitigate that through some of the things you just talked about in terms of absorbing that through other vacancies.
Correct.
Thank you.
And just one note too, Molly, that's correct. Also, doing it in this time frame allows us to set the FY26 budget with much more accurate salary information, which is helpful, so that we won't need to do the same exercise next year.
Yep, understood. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Stephanie, if I could ask you, as our finance director, do you see the value in doing a classification study like this for this group every 5 years?
I can definitely see the benefit to that. As Molly said, it sort of just keeps up with mitigating the having to wait 10 years or 10, 15 years, as she suggested, and having to sort of catch up with the market as is. So I do see the benefit of that.
Thank you.
And if I could just add on to that, I think it also will help the town be better positioned for recruitment and retention.
Of course. Thank you, Chris.
And I'm supportive of this endeavor as well, Molly and Mary. And I have to tell you, it's something we do in the hospital sector regularly. And if we waited 5 years, it would not be a good thing. We do it much more. Yeah, you have to do it. Well, at least in the hospital sector, we have to do it more frequently than every 5 years, just because of the dynamics, especially at the moment. But I think it's a good move. And I'm very concerned with the open positions, Molly, that you've had to deal with. So this sounds like a pretty good plan. So we're going to use reserve funds. We're going to revisit this March, April. And Rob, as you pointed out, the maximum total will be 133K this year. And Stephanie's very happy because it helps her put the budget together for next year.
Everything we do to keep Stephanie happy.
All right. Rob or Mary Ann, any other thoughts or comments?
No further questions from me.
No,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay. Mea culpa, I did not ask to see if there's anyone from when we discussed FS1 prior to this, if the public had any questions or comments. So I'm going to do a twofer unless I'm wrong, Pat. I want, if anyone from that neighborhood wanted to weigh in on anything that we said this evening. So Tish, can we do comments from the FS1 and from this as well, please?
I have one general question. This person needs to enter in their address. It's not from FS1, it's about for public comment period. But
Okay.
the person needs to, yes, needs to.
I just want to
be there.
emphasize that I made a mistake by not seeking the public input on the FS1 discussion. So if folks want to weigh in on that, this is the time.
And also if they could just list their full name.
Yeah, full name and address, please, before Tish can read that.
This is from Nada Milosevic, Fabrizio. She said, it's for public comment in another one of my many attempts over the course of countless years to further transparency for the residents of this community. I have learned that the majority of Massachusetts municipalities display all who have signed into these Zoom meetings for all to see. I would like to learn who the like-minded residents are, i.e. residents that are actually interested in our many public meetings. Why doesn't Westwood do the same, and who is the ultimate decision maker on this matter?
Well, I can start. I'm not familiar with the process for posting the names during this Zoom process. I don't know, Chris, if you have any, are you familiar with this system that we're using?
The system that we're using now is we had some experiences early on with virtual meetings. And when we discussed it with the board, this was the decision that the board made at that time to have the comments typed into the chat feature. It will be read aloud. It provided that the individuals identify with their full name and their address. As far as the other comments, as far as what other municipalities do when they're displaying in their Zoom meetings, I have not done research on that.
Chris, if I may, I think the essence of the question is the attendees list and the panelist lists are viewable only to the panelists, because I believe we are using the webinar feature of Zoom, and I'm not sure as to the technical differences between that and just a meeting where we had many of those Zoom bombers come in. So I believe that may be the thing that is the ultimate question that is being asked. And I don't know that I don't know what the technical capabilities are of Zoom based on the way we utilize it. But if there are other communities that are showing it, I'd be interested to understand how they go about doing that.
Okay.
I agree. And in fact, I didn't realize that all attendees could not see who the other attendees were. As you say, Rob, apparently that's a function that only we have as panelists, but I didn't realize that that didn't exist for all attendees.
And Rob, is your hand still up, Rob? I don't want to miss it twice, man.
Sorry, no, Joe, I had not put it down. My bad.
But Rob, when I first came on board, you were very helpful with telling me a little bit some of the issues that you guys had in the Zoom meetings. And so you had to adjust the format of this subsequent to those disruptions that you had or were afraid you were going to have. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, when a meeting wasn't properly put, technically configured as a webinar, it allowed people to, if you just use the chat feature versus the Q&A feature, and you allow everyone in as panelists, if it were just one giant open meeting, you can have a lot of interruption and or improper things put forward, many of which are highly offensive. That was my very first meeting with Chris, was one where we had Zoom bombers and they were saying some very horrible things about members of the staff, racist, misogynist, a whole bunch of things. And that was a ped bike meeting, and we chose to stop that at that very moment. So the way that the webinar feature is configured is it allows for greater participation and control. Still allows the same level of participation of the community by using the Q&A feature, and does so without having any threat of interruption.
Thanks, Rob.
Rob, Mr. Chair, if I could just add, and Tish, you may be able to speak on this one. We still have impacts that are happening during your virtual meetings between Tish and members from Westwood Media Center being able to adjust those and correct those. So we have that barrier with the webinar. So we still have inappropriate things that are happening through the question and answer portion, if I'm not mistaken, Tish, is that correct?
That's correct.
So we still have it. It hasn't gone away, but the level of protection that we have for these virtual meetings has provided us with greater opportunity to capture those and prevent those from disrupting the meetings of the town.
Well, that's been very helpful for me. But Chris, just so I understand, you're going to scope out what other municipalities do as far as displaying the names. Is that correct?
Yes, I'll certainly look into that with other communities as far as so other attendees can see. So this is what happens with the majority of our board meetings that are webinars, not just the select board meetings. So when you attend other meetings, if you are not a panelist, you can't see anything. So there are times when I'm not a panelist and I'm an attendee. I can watch the meeting, but I can't see who else is in the meeting.
All right. But legitimate request.
We'll certainly look into it.
Yeah, and just to be clear to Joe, that attendee list is highly fluid and dynamic based on the progression through the agenda. If someone is on the early part of the agenda, like the gentleman who had petitioned for the fun run, he comes, states his case, and then he's off, right? So that is a highly dynamic list as we progress through the meeting, just so that everybody's clear.
Yeah. Thank you, Rob. All right, let's move on to our next. Is there anything else there?
Joe, there's a comment from Kathy Wallace, 283 Farm Lane. Is the 133,000 a 6-month budget impact? Is it appropriate to use reserve funds since it's an operating expense and not a one-time expense? What is the plan to achieve the recommended staffing level at WFD to address this public safety issue?
Molly, would you like to?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm happy to start that. So by implementing this mid-year, our attempt is to spread out the cost, I think, Mr. Gotti said, over 2 fiscal years. So the only way I know how to explain that is with an example. So if an individual is making 75,000 right now, and on the new plan, they'll be making 78,000. So we're assuming they're going to get a step and a COLA come July 1st, 2025. That would bring them to about 81,000. The difference between 75,000 and 81,000 is approximately an 8.5% increase, which is a sizable increase. By implementing this mid-year, we're essentially changing their FY25 salary from 75,000 to 78,000, while only costing half of that because we're implementing it this year. So when that individual in July goes to get their cost of living adjustment and step, it's only going to equalize it to about a 4.5% raise, which is a much more reasonable increase for one individual. Stephanie, I hate to throw this at you, but that is my layman's. I've dumbed it down as much as I possibly can to explain it. Does that make sense to you?
It does. Do you want me to take the second part of the question too?
Yes, please.
So it is actually common practice that we utilize the select board reserve fund to do year-end closeouts to make sure all our operating budget line items for each department come in a positive at the end of the year. So we've come to the board a number of years in the past in the June, July timeframe to request a reserve fund transfer to close out any year-end overages that we had. Sometimes that does also include, I can think of a few examples in the past couple of years of mid-year implementations of different salary changes. If a certain position in town was regraded or reclassified, and we need to close out that line item for that department, we have utilized the select board reserve fund in the past.
Thank you, Stephanie. All right. Is there anything else there, Tish, before we move on?
There's a few additional comments from Ms. Fabrizio. I can read them if you like. It says, the host changes the preferences, long overdue, people bombing meetings, enough excuses, please. 4 years ago at least. Control there lies the problem. Boston, certainly Truro, another municipality has full transparency, and Mr. Gotti understood.
Excellent. Thank you, Tish. Next on our agenda is, Tish, I've got approval of minutes, but I see the select board meeting dates in here as well.
Correct.
Do we need to discuss the select board meeting dates during this meeting?
Yes, to review them and see if anyone had any conflicts, normally the proposed meeting dates for January through May.
I do not.
I had a conflict with the one on the Tuesday, the 21st. I will be flying and will not be available that day.
I believe we proposed instead of January 21st to hold it on January 22nd, if that is fine with all members.
That is
Pending no issues with your returning flight.
fine. That works for me.
That works for me too. Thank you.
Okay.
Same here, Tish.
Okay.
And the rest are all good, folks?
Yes, thank you.
The only one that may be a challenge for me, and I don't know yet, is the 28th of April. I know that's one that's, sort of critical from a timing perspective, so I'll try and work that one, but that one I'm a little bit uncertain of at this moment.
Thank you.
And just as a reminder to the board, currently the law for virtual meetings runs through March 31st. So anything, unless something happens at the state level, that would mean any meeting on April 1st would have to be in person. I do believe that there are conversations at the state level regarding some type of virtual or hybrid meeting, leaning a little bit more towards the hybrid meeting, in person and hybrid. But I will certainly update the board after I hear more information.
Thank you, Chris. All right, that brings us down to liaison reports. I'll start with the housing partnership. I think Amanda has finally secured a date for us to meet. She's been trying her best to get everyone on board with that. I think we're in good shape there. And the off-leash dog park, I've had some discussions with town council and our town administrator as well on some issues. And Tish, I think you're working on trying to pull a rabbit out of the hat and find a date that we can all meet.
Still
Correct.
working on it, work in progress.
Excellent, thank you. Mary Ann, any reports?
Yes, just briefly, the Canton Street Working Group will hopefully be meeting later this month. We've had some scheduling difficulties trying to find a date that works for all of our busy members, but we're focusing on the week of November 18th for a meeting. So hopefully we'll get that scheduled. And thank you again, Tish, for all of your assistance. And wanted to briefly report that the Human Rights Task Force recently met. We discussed the Drug-Free Community Act, which is providing funds to Westwood for substance abuse prevention. We discussed the fact that the ADA self-evaluation and transition plan has been vetted and will be coming to the select board for discussion in the next couple of months or so. We reviewed the therapeutic recreation offerings that are currently being offered by the rec department. And we also discussed the fact that our municipal employees recently underwent diversity, equity, and inclusion training through a budget earmark through Senator Rush's office. We also discussed looking to expand that training to other town employees. That's my report. Thank you.
It's a lot. Thank you. Rob, from
Sure
your end?
thing. As you recall, Mr. Chair, we asked the Long Range Financial Planning Committee to take a look at a real estate transfer fee. So we have a multitude of work streams that the many folks on the Long Range Financial Planning Committee are in the process of researching. Stephanie had provided some background information, which was very helpful. So thank you, Stephanie. And each of the committee members I'm checking in with just to see where they stand in their respective workstream research. With the school building committee, obviously, if you drive down Gay Street, you are seeing some really good looking fields out in front. I don't know exactly when those fences will be coming down. They may stay through the winter just to protect them until we get to the spring use time, but they are looking really, really good. And then the Westwood Environmental Action Committee, while I wasn't able to make their meeting the other night, obviously you saw some of the result of their good work on the stuff that Tom Philbin presented with respect to the community choice electric program. So kudos to them and all their hard work. So that is what I have on my three committees.
I think there's a fourth one, Rob. Yeah, Norwood Hospital Update Committee.
Yes, thank you.
Since you're doing double duty.
Well, yeah. So at our last meeting, I took that remotely and was able to attend. There was a meeting that the state held. It was much like the DOT when they came to the Downey School. It was a listening session. So they did not provide any specific answers to the questions or concerns raised by residents. I was joined by Colin McCarthy, our assistant chief, and that we were probably two of the only non-Norwood residents to speak. Or actually, I spoke, he did not. And I made sure that the Department of Health understood the very real impact, not just to Norwood, but to all the surrounding communities that avail themselves of the services at Norwood Hospital and the impact that has had on runtime replacement time and back-in station, the risk that that poses to the community, and the very real cost impact that all of that has. So there were many of the staff from the hospital that, quite frankly, talked about the mismanagement under Stewart. That is just horrible. As of, I believe that licensing is due to be renewed as early as possibly tomorrow. I don't know if that has happened. I know that many of the nurses and staff that spoke said that there were people that were receiving treatment that had no idea where they were supposed to go once the hospital closed. There were issues with respect to what their healthcare plans themselves as employees was going to be. And I believe there were many referring doctors who had no indication of where they were supposed to refer patients to. So all in all, it was a listening on the part of the Department of Health. They are to incorporate what they heard into Stewart's closure plan. I have not yet seen anything reported out as to how that plan may have been modified based on what they heard from the community.
I imagine that'll take some time, but Rob, thanks for doing that, and thanks for the great report on your new fourth committee.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us down to any other business that may properly come before the board.
Point of order, Joe.
Please.
The meeting minutes. Would you like me to do that
Yep.
now?
I checked it off too soon. Yes, thank you, Mary. Meeting minutes for September 30th and October 21st. I did not see anything on those.
I'm happy to make a motion.
I have
Please,
no
yeah.
changes. Yep.
I move that we approve the regular meeting minutes for the select board meeting of September 30, 2024, as written.
Second that motion.
Roll call, Mary Ann,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. And Tish, the note I sent you had to do with the November 4th meeting minutes. I got ahead of myself on that, but we can talk about that later. All right. Thank you, Mary Ann. Yep.
Sure, and one more, I also move that we approve the regular meeting minutes for the select board meeting of October 21, 2024, as written.
Second that motion as well.
Roll call, Mary Ann,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Thanks, Mary Ann.
You bet.
Public and press, anything in the queue there, Tish?
There's just another comment from Kathy Wallace. Please answer my question about WFD. So
I
believe the question was, what is the plan to achieve the recommended staff in a WFD to address this public safety issue?
I know the chief is, I believe, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they have filled one position. And they have two, or Molly, two positions on deck. Is that correct? I think you met with, Molly, you met with the team this week.
Yep. So there were 3 positions open at the beginning of the fiscal year. 1 has been filled, which leaves 2 remaining, the 2 that were added in the FY25 budget. As we talked at length about this past spring, there is a national shortage of paramedics, and it is very difficult for us to find them. So those 2 positions have not been filled. To answer the direct question, what is the plan? I would say that the finance team sent out the FY26 operating budget proposals to departments this morning. And so those conversations will begin in the next few weeks to determine how to move forward.
Okay. So you are looking at different avenues as far as filling those positions.
I'm sorry, what do you mean by different avenues?
Or rather than posting the same time and time again?
We took it down and I had a meeting with the assistant fire chief and one of the deputies where we're trying to reimagine how to rebrand
Perfect.
positions
Okay.
and
Yep.
yeah, go from there.
Excellent, thanks.
Joe, if I can just maybe clarify, I believe the question from Kathy is with respect to last year, we approved 2 additional firefighters. And there were, there was a belief that there should be 4 additional. And so we have phased this. We approved the first 2. And I think hers, it relates to the other 2 that were being discussed. And I believe that Molly and Stephanie just indicated that this is all very early as we are planning fiscal year budgets from an operating perspective. Does that sound correct? Thank
Yes.
I would just add, I certainly hope we can get the 2 additional firefighters on the upcoming budget. That would be, I'd be very much in favor of that. All right, other business, I hopped the gun on this other business, come before the board. Tish, you keep moving on me. Anything else in there?
Not at this time.
Great. Public and press? Coming down to the wire. Our next meeting is November 18th at 6 p.m. via Zoom, Chris. We can still keep doing it.
Yes, you can.
All right. And I'm sure you folks noticed that Tish put in the FS1 meeting dates as well on those calendars that we got. Anyone want to make a motion?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call. Mary Ann,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. And thank you to everyone, especially you, Tish, for helping out moving this meeting along. And I hope you all have a great evening. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Good night.